This is Tony Chimmel, and I'd like to introduce the hosts of the Game Marks podcast, George Feis and Johnny Clash.
Welcome to the Game Marks podcast, where each and every week we take a deep dive into the good, the bad, and the awesome of all things video games. My name is George Feis.
And I'm the man they call Johnny Clash, and today we are playing Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2. We're also going to discuss our favorite skate spots and some other skateboarding-related topics, baby.
Oh, man, what a crazy episode already. And as always, guys, please make sure to subscribe and leave a 5-star rating for this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you choose to listen. And make sure to follow along on all forms of social media at Game Marks Pod. And don't forget, you can get early access to this show, show notes, exclusive content, and a whole lot more from not only this show, but also State of Affairs and Going Postal over at our Patreon, patreon.com/podexchange. That's PODXCHANGE. Johnny Clash.
Yo, here we are.
Hot off the heels of Super Fire Pro Wrestling 3 final bout. Now we are changing it up. Our first ever series. We are diving in to Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. We're going to talk a little bit about that right now. For those of you who may be joining us for the first time, but a little catch up from last week, John. How you feeling about Super Fire Pro Wrestling 3?
I'm feeling very good. That was a great game. Double play forever from both of us. We like pretty much the entire Super Fire Pro Wrestling series. I would go back. I will be playing it again. So, yeah, how are you feeling?
I'm right there with you, man. Fire Pro Wrestling is just one of those games that when it's good, it's great, and it's on par with everything else. But boy, when it is bad, and we have played some of the bad ones, it is a miss by a large margin. But hey, yes. Let's talk about this. Guys, if you are joining us for the first time here, welcome to the Game Marks podcast. We are usually a wrestling video game podcast, but we are drastically running out of wrestling games to play. So in an effort to stretch out the length of this podcast and kind of extend the life of that last year and a half-ish of wrestling video games on our list, we decided to try something different. So we are going to be breaking down a series of wrestling, or of a series of video games in between wrestling games, and we are starting with Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. This episode will be 1 and 2, then we will do 3 and 4, and we'll go until we hit a point where we're just like, hey, these are the games that, you know, either are super poor rated or we don't have the means to play them. Tony Hawk's Ride, we don't really necessarily have the means to play them, but we will cover and we will address what we will be playing next week and so on at the end of every episode. But are you ready, John? I am so excited to get into Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, a game that you and I are both on record multiple times saying took up a lot of time in our childhood.
Still does, especially in my brain. It lives rent-free. I am ready. I am doing a kickflip off the diving board. Let's do it, baby.
Looking to add the newest wrestling figures to your lineup? There's no better spot to pick up your next figure than the Wrestling Collector Shop.
Started by collectors for collectors around the globe, Wrestling Collector Shop has been serving the fans the latest and greatest in wrestling action figures since 2002. So the next time you're looking for the newest wrestling collectible to add to your collection, make sure to go to WrestlingCollectorShop.com and use code GameMarks to save yourself 10% on your order.
That's 10% off your order with code GameMarks at WrestlingCollectorShop.com.
All right, the deep dives are brought to you by our friends over at Wrestling Collector Shop. Make sure to use code GameMarks to save yourself 10% over at WrestlingCollectorShop.com. And here we go, John. courtesy of our friends over at Wrestling Collector Shop. We give away a figure each and every week. Now, all you gotta do to win this figure is leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and you will be entered to win what, Johnny Clash?
This Elite 109 suited Cody Rhodes. Look at that.
Ooh,
Beautiful
look at that.
figure. He's got a little extra hands and stuff. Need those extra hands. You need those C grips to hold the microphone.
I mean, how else are you going to cut a promo in the middle of your Fig Fed?
Exactly. All right. Let's start breaking it down. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. This is the first Tony Hawk Pro Skater game ever, was released on September 29th, 1999 for the PlayStation, Nintendo 64, Game Boy Color, Dreamcast, N-Gage, and the Brew, which is Verizon Vcast. I may have been playing it on that.
Wow.
Developed by Neversoft and Natsumi for the Game Boy Color and published by Activision. Now, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 released a little bit less than a year later on September 19th of 2000 for the PlayStation, Windows, Game Boy Color, Dreamcast, Game Boy Advance, the Mac OS X, Nintendo 64, the Pocket PC, and the iPhone operating system. That came a little later, obviously. Also developed by Neversoft and Vicarious Visions for the Game Boy Advance and Natsumi for the Game Boy Color, and also published by Activision. Now, where did you play this game, George?
I was a Tony Hawk's PlayStation guy.
Okay, so I played the first one on N64, and I believe I had it on my phone, so Verizon. But then Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 I had on PlayStation, Game Boy Advance, and also... No, that's true. I had only Tony Hawk's Pro Skater for the phone. I'm remembering now. Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2, I'm thinking of Game Boy Advance, which was also a fantastic handheld game. A little bit different, but you had those like same levels in there, so it was cool to see them in that format. Now, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, the first installment of the Tony Hawk series. It takes place in kind of like an urban environment, those famous skate spots. You're getting the vert ramps, you're getting the streets, you're getting punk rock and ska music. And when you think of skateboarding, that's the first thing that should come to your mind. There is a whole documentary on it. What's it called? It's based on the Goldfinger lyrics, right? Pretending I'm Superman.
Oh, yeah.
Great documentary. I was just in it the entire time. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. It's basically how the music shaped the skateboarding industry with the Tony Hawk games. It's just so cool. Now, Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2, obviously the second in the series. It takes place in kind of similar environments. Now we're adding some hip-hop to the mix with the punk rock music. It's an even longer soundtrack, and we're going to break those down a little bit later. Very similar games, and you could tell because they're not even a year apart. It's kind of like how SmackDown and SmackDown 1 were, where you're kind of just upgrading the first one. The mechanics are still the same. Everything kind of still looks the same. You're just getting a more expansive roster, more levels, a nicer menu. It's kind of like this first game is cool, but let's see what we could push it to after people actually like it. So,
and playing these back to back, you can see the production value increase, the presentation increase. We're going to talk in a little bit about the art style and things like that, but that's pushing the envelope, pushing the hardware beyond where you were in the first one almost a full year later. You could tell the presentation of the skaters themselves, the environments, the lighting, the everything, how things interact just feels so... It's already crisp and clean in the first one. And because it's so good in that first one, they just take it and they go, okay, polish it up, make it nice and new, add a couple things, and now it's a brand new game, and it's even better than the second one. I know so many people that if you ask them what their favorite, think of how many games there are in the lineage of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. I know people who still say that 2 is their number one over
it has to be.
Everything.
Tony Hawk Pro Skater, I feel like, was popular, but it wasn't until Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2, like that was peak, just skateboarding was the thing right then. Like,
people who weren't skateboarders were playing the game
Everyone.
because of how good the game were. Like people who had never expressed any interest in skateboarding or skateboarding video games. But this is also in the era of like, you're getting like cool boarders and Too Extreme,
Cool
and 1080
boarders.
snowboarding and SSX. And this is all a part of that. And Tony Hawk just stands apart from all of those games. Those are good in their own rights, but this just delivers on a core level of an experience for these types of games.
I completely agree. And I told you, me and my friends had an ongoing just competition in Tony Hawk 2, and I believe it carried over to 3 and 4, where you would be master of the game if you won. But we were so locked in on like those grinds where when you end the game, like you're still grinding, you're still manualing, and you're just stacking on combos, that these games would just never end. And it would be run after run of just like the most insane scores. And 2 was really at the pinnacle of that. That was the main game we played. But let's talk about what we have here in each of them. They both have a career mode where your objective is to kind of evolve your character's attributes and stats. You can customize a character. I almost said wrestler. And you earn money and profits, and you boost them up. In Tony Hawk 1, you get a single session, which is where you just get the highest score within 2 minutes. I think that's what most people do, just a little 2-minute run. Free skate, where you could do whatever you'd like for however long you want. You just want to practice moves. You want to go check some stuff out. And then, of course, there's multiplayer, where you have a few different competition games. Now, the same modes carry over to Tony Hawk 2, but now you're also getting a level editor where you can make your own custom skate park. I tried this a few times. It was still it's kind of buggy, I guess you could say. It didn't work too great, so I didn't really do it too much, but I definitely did try a few times. There was nothing too crazy.
I had a friend who tried to make one, and I can't remember what the exact scenario was, but it was like a mini ramp to grind rail, and it put you up against the wall, so like you would grind into the wall, and for some reason the animation of you hitting the wall, if you hit it right or you did something, if you came off the rail at just the right time, you would clip through in like a corner and you would just fall through the map, and like the game was over.
Yeah, something like that always ended up happening. Too good to be true, right? But then you're also getting your multiplayer game modes. Now you're getting graffiti, which is where you would pretty much tag a wall with a move. You would have to untag it or put your tag on it. I think it was red and blue.
Yep, it was red versus blue, yeah.
You would have to retag the spot. So I think we played that a lot. It just gets, when you start losing in graffiti mode,
it's just hard to come back.
It's so hard. It's like, that's it. That's the end. But there's trick attack, where you're both in that 2-minute run and you're just trying to outdo each other. Then there's
you
tag, where you have
trick attack, and 2, you can increase it. You can go up to a 10-minute run. Yeah.
We did a nice 5-minute one. Go check our YouTube for that. Tag, where you have to tag the other person, which is, that one was never too much fun.
That one's really good depending on what level you're on. Like, I feel like some of these while the game modes work on every level, some of them are better suited for certain levels.
Yeah. I
think
at
them all.
Tag was, you definitely need a street level for that, not like Hangar.
There's that one, I can't remember the name of the level right now. Is it in the notes? No. There's that downhill one where it's just you go from the top to the bottom. That is the best for tag, because that's fun. It already is a challenge just to complete the level itself, but to then add the extra part of, well, I also have to worry about the person I'm trying to tag while I'm playing this.
And not get tagged yourself. Yeah. Not one of my favorite game modes, but speaking of a favorite game mode, horse was the best one. You could put in a custom word, or you could just use horse, and you go 1 for 1 trying to outdo each other's moves, getting a higher score. A lot of fun. I think that was the one we did most, other than just Trick Attack.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That is. Oh man. I feel like the multiplayer is based around Trick Attack. It's just where so much of the core gameplay mechanics are. It's what you do in the single player career campaign mode that translates so easily into the multiplayer. And I feel like so many people spent more time in that than like you play the story mode to get the unlockables, and then the only thing you do is hang out with friends and play 2-player mode.
Yeah. I think for the most part, rather than Trick Attack, we did just single runs and would try to beat each other's score.
Yep.
Which I guess is just kind of Trick Attack, but separate. I don't know why we did it that way.
But if you do it separate, you get whole screen.
Yeah, that's probably the reason why. But then there's also Free Skate, where you could just free skate, have fun. You and your buddy just going for it. Now, I want to talk about these soundtracks here. We can't name all these songs. There's so many, but my God, the first one had the Dead Kennedys, Goldfinger, that's Superman. That, like, when you think of Superman by Goldfinger, which is actually a song I play a lot. Goldfinger's definitely on my top list.
Me too.
Whew, that just brings you back to Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. You got Primus, you got there's just the Vandals. What a good soundtrack. But then Tony Hawk 2. To me, this one's more iconic. This soundtrack shaped my childhood. This was what I listened to. If I hear any of these songs now, any of them, they're automatically sending me right back to 2000. You got Papa Roach, you got Anthrax and Public Enemy, Rage Against the Machine, Bad Religion, Power Man 5000. Like, it just keeps going on and on. This is, like, come on. You hear any of these, you're like, Tony Hawk, you like the first soundtrack better?
Yeah, I see. This is my my problem here is that I think I like the gameplay of 2 better, but the soundtrack of 1.
Oh my God! If I could go back in time to the first time I dropped that hangar and you just hear Guerrilla Radio start, dan dan dan. Oh, like, look at that! Look at that! Look at the hairs! Look at the hairs! That just did that. Rage Against the Machine just did that. Or even the Anthrax and Public Enemy song.
Oh,
turn it up, bring
yep.
the noise. Power Man. This got me into Bad Religion. I was walking around 8th grade listening to Bad Religion. Like, who? Like, what? Thank you, Tony Hawk.
Taught us good music.
Taught us good music. Now, let's get into the actual like game engine here, because in the first game, this is actually a modified version of the engine that Neversoft used in their earlier game, Apocalypse.
Oh.
So, there we go. Now,
right.
Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 uses the same engine, but now it's improved graphics and gameplay, and most notably, the introduction of manuals. And now cash rewards are given out within the gameplay as well. Now, want to run through this roster here?
Oh, yeah, let's do it. So there's a little bit of crossover here, and then some extra characters in the second one. So appearing in both games, you've got, you know what? You think it's easier if we just do all of 1 and then all of 2? We're talking about
I think we do all of 1 then all of 2. They're not in any order right now.
All right. So your roster for Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1. You've got Bob Burnquist, Kareem Campbell, Rune Glifberg, Tony Hawk, Bucky Lasik, Chad Muska, Andrew Reynolds, Jeff Rowley, Alyssa Steamer, and Jamie Thomas.
I'll take 2. Now, I always said Bucky Lasik, but I guess it's Lasik.
Oh, it
You've
might
got
be.
Bob Burnquist, Steve Caballero, Kareem Campbell, Rune Glifberg, Tony Hawk, Bucky Lasik, Rodney Mullen, Chad Muska, Andrew Reynolds, Jeff Rowley, Eric Costin, Alyssa Steamer, Jamie Thomas, and Spider-Man Unlockable.
And then
Thanks to Activision.
what is 3 you get Officer Dick, or is that later on?
I think that's 3 or 4. There is also like a K-pop band in Tony Hawk 2.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't think I ever unlocked them. I saw that today in the notes. Didn't know how to unlock them or what they were, so I just left it out. So if
In
you want
Tony
to
Hawk Pro Skater 2,
yeah. All right. Well, now I have to look it up.
I'm curious. Oh yeah, Finn KL band singers exclusive to the Korean version.
Yeah, that's why we didn't unlock them. We did not have that. So your go-to is also Bucky, right?
Yeah.
Because I, as well, also used Bucky primarily, and that was pretty much the only person other than Chad Muska, because me and my friends were like, "Oh, he's such a badass. He smokes marijuana." That was like his thing back then. Now, speaking of that Tony Hawk documentary, a lot of these guys look beat.
It's a very, very. I mean, were you a skate tape trader back in the day?
Not too much, but I would definitely, like we were talking about in the last episode, like I would go to Hollywood Video or Blockbuster and I would rent one here and there, like, oh, the new Element video's out, and just have it on. Yeah,
you've seen these crazy jumps and tricks that people are doing, where they're doing crazy gaps and stair rails, and some of these, I mean, it's like getting thrown off a Hell in a Cell, if we're going to equate it back to wrestling. Like it is, these are massive drops that people are doing. And think of like the X Games when they do like the big air, like how massive that ramp is.
that's huge. I was afraid to ever drop in on like a vert ramp. I can't even imagine being up in the air.
It's crazy.
Yeah. But all right, let's take a quick break. We're going to come back. We're going to talk about the levels here and what you could play in this game.
All right, John. Interesting little tidbit. Oh, what do we got here? You guys aren't going to believe this, but I've got like 15 DVDs. Most of them are skateboard related. That comes from Soups in the chat. Guys,
Of course.
you want to be a part of the live recordings. You can be a part of it. If you join patreon.com/podexchange, you could be here taking part in the live recordings of each and every episode. John, did you know that there are exclusive levels to Tony Hawk Pro Skater 1 and 2 depending on what console you played on?
Let's hear all about it.
All right, so for the for the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1, you've got the warehouse, the school, mall, skate park, downtown, Downhill Jam, that's the one that we were talking about before, Burnside, Streets, and Roswell, New Mexico, which that Roswell level, so much fun.
Oh, yeah.
So much fun to play. But Harbor is a Game Boy Color exclusive level. I was unaware that there was an exclusive level. Gonna have to go back and check that out, mainly just because never really played this game on a Game Boy Color. So we're gonna,
oh, no. I'm looking at the screenshots. It is side scroll.
Yeah, it's Game Boy Color. What do you expect?
Listen, I had Game Boy Advance and it was awesome. But then again, it was Advance.
That's Advance.
Yeah. Wow.
For the Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2 levels, you've got Hangar, School 2, Marseille, New York City, Venice, Philadelphia, the Bull Ring in Mexico, the Chopper Drop in Hawaii, Skate Heaven in outer space, and then for the PC and iOS, you have Warehouse and Downhill Jam. And then for the N64 version, you've got the Hoffman Factory. And in the Game Boy Advance exclusive, you got the Warehouse and the Rooftops. Now, do you remember playing Warehouse and Rooftops?
I do, actually.
There we go.
Rooftops is... I
Game
have to
Boy
actually look
Advance.
that up. Tony Hawk, Game Boy Advance. Yeah. Oh, my God. Dude, there was just something so cool about having your favorite game in now handheld form. Because it's not identical to the actual Tony Hawk, but they did such a good job of porting it to the Game Boy Advance that it was still fun, still felt the same. It was nice.
And it wasn't those Tiger Electronics.
No, it
handhelds.
was beautiful.
It was a full game. It wasn't, what we have nowadays, but it was just something so satisfying that you could still play something similar.
Yeah,
Keep that same experience.
It has to be said, because we're not really covering this, but there are other versions. We know Tony Hawk 1 and 2 came out, 3 or 4 years ago?
The remastered versions. Yeah.
There was Tony Hawk 2X that came out for the Xbox. That was just Tony Hawk 2, but it was like little dumbed down, I guess you could say. Better graphics because it was on the Xbox, but it didn't have as much. It was a little weak, if you ask me. There's been re-releases here and there. We're not going to really get into those. We're talking about the core games here, and I'm here for them. Let's talk about these damn covers, because what
iconic.
is more iconic than the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater logo? And the answer is the Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2 logo.
I was going to say, the only thing that is more recognizable than 1 is 2. And then, I would be honest with you, can't picture the cover for 3 and 4.
I can't either, and I played the crap out of them. But we'll talk about those another time. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. This logo.
I got great news, John.
Yeah.
It looks exactly like 2.
I thought so. Maybe a little more.
It's a little cleaner.
Yeah. Tony Hawk in that yellow shirt on the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 cover. I could see that when I close my eyes. I could see that in my sleep. That is just... We've said iconic a million times. I'm going to say it one more time. It's just the best.
There's just something... This is... I feel like we don't necessarily say this a lot on this podcast, or at least we haven't recently. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater is the purest shot of nostalgia that someone that is in their mid to late 30s can get, I think, right now. Like, if you were a kid in the 90s, there you have some memory of an experience with Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, whether somewhere in the lineage of the entire series, maybe you had a sibling who played it, you were aware of its existence, and I think that goes a long way with the legacy of the series as a whole.
It's just one of those things. You could compare it to like Revenge or No Mercy. It's one of those things, whether you weren't a fan, you had it and you played the shit out of it.
Or you at the very least knew that it was there.
Yeah.
You're like,
exactly.
I've never played Tony Hawk, but I definitely know what it is.
Mm-hmm. That's for sure.
Man, oh man.
Let's talk about the actual art style here. I think both of them can compare to each other. I like the Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2 menu, how it's in the skate wheel and it kind of wheels as you go.
Yeah.
But the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater menu is just nice and clean to begin with. And while we were talking about tape trading, one of those options there on the screen, you unlock videos. Now, in the game, when you're in career mode, one of the objectives is to collect the secret tape, which is just a tape that's usually somewhere high up or somewhere not easily accessible in another room.
Behind
when
a
you
wall,
unlock it, you now unlock a tape that you can watch within the game. So your tape trading just got even better. But also, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 came with Dave Mirra Pro BMX, the demo, which is essentially the same game, just with a BMX bike. And then years later, you get... Who did I say? Did I say Matt Hoffman?
Yeah, Matt Hoffman.
Okay, years later, you get Dave Mirra's BMX, Freestyle BMX. I remember playing that on the Xbox.
I also have very vivid memories of playing that.
Now, you want to take it even a step further. I had another ripoff that someone bought me for Christmas.
Is it the inline skate?
No, it was Razor Scooter.
Ooh.
It was like this. It was just slower and clunkier, and it was just not good at all.
Razor Scooter.
Yeah.
Wasn't there also Kelly Slater Surfing that was also a game?
I think there was. Kelly Slater Surfing game. Let's see. Oh, yeah.
I don't know if it's made by Activision.
PS2.
I definitely remember that there was a Kelly Slater Surfing game.
EA Mobile. Activision, yeah. Oh yeah, it's the same logo. They all had the same logo. Razor scooter game. Yes, the little kid on the cover, it looks like, even though it's probably a grown man.
That needs to be shared and posted on social media.
What a silly game that was.
Ah,
Damn.
well, that'll be a one-off game that we play. Maybe that's what we do at one point. We play all the Activision one-off sports games. We do the Razor scooter. We do the skateboard or the surfing one. I'm sure that there's a snowboarding one. There's the inline skate one. We'll just do Activision one-off sport games.
That could be an OMG episode. That would be great.
That could be.
Let's talk about what this game looks like.
I was going to say, going back to what we were talking about earlier with the menus and stuff, it goes back to what I kind of led the episode with, is that the presentation is very similar between the two. It's just the emphasis on what is prominently displayed. The character select screen for one, while the while the skaters are present, that's going to be a hard thing to break up. While the skaters are present, they're not necessarily there's not a huge stat breakdown. Where in 2, you're getting full stat breakdown: air, hang time, ollie, speed, spin, landing, switch, rail balance, lip balance, manuals, and those stats are unique to each person. And the option to then change the appearance, the actual models themselves are larger on the screen. It's just more of a focus was put on the skaters and less of it being like, this is a video game, play the video game. This is like, hey, now that you're familiar with the first one, you know that the skaters are the star of the game. Let's tell you a little bit more about them. There's little bios about them, which you don't get in the first one. It's just, you can tell that the popularity of the first one affected how the skaters were represented in the second one.
Absolutely. And then you get, what's it called? I feel like in the second one, most of what I enjoyed doing was unlocking and customizing.
Absolutely.
Like when you got the new skateboard decks, like there's a whole world in here you don't even see just from screenshots. Or if you didn't put time into the game, you think, okay, I could select a board, select some wheel colors, and that's it.
Collect skate.
Oh, there is a whole freaking world in here of Birdhouse. Like any brand you name, it is all there for you to unlock. Especially if you have a custom, almost said wrestler, character. You can go in there and really just deck them out in your favorite brands. I was a big Birdhouse guy. Everything was Birdhouse. And then I think it was later on, they added World Industries, but everyone loved World Industries, and it took a while for them to actually be in the Tony Hawk games.
Is World Industries, no, Elements is the little...
World Industries was Wet Willie and Flame Boy.
Okay, no, that's what I was thinking of.
Everyone loved them. But okay, George, we haven't had one of these in a while. I'm going to hit you with it right now. Did you know?
Oh!
Did you know, as a result of disappointing sales of Blue Stinger, Activision was discouraged from publishing further titles for the Dreamcast and relinquished the distribution of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater on the console to Crave Entertainment? I'll keep going. Did you know a playable demo with only 2 available skaters was integrated into the Jam Pack Summer 99 compilation CD released from PlayStation Underground? And did you know Tony Hawk's Pro Skater is still on eBay $26.95?
All right, well, I thought that we were going to do the Did You Knows based on the game, so I'll do Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2. Did you know a playable demonstration was subsequently integrated into the Jam Pack Summer 2K compilation CD released by PlayStation Underground? And did you know that this game is available on eBay for $29.95? John, let's talk really, really briefly about those compilation sampler CDs. How great were those back in the day?
There are a lot of games I would have never played if it wasn't for those samplers.
Some of them were just so good.
Spyro the Dragon.
Yeah.
There's a lot
Crash,
of stuff.
I think.
Crash.
Dino Crisis.
Jersey Devil. Remember that
I
one?
think Jet
Duke
Set
Nukem.
Radio was on one of them.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Ah, so good.
But oh boy, George, I got there's a lot here.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
So,
sit back and relax.
do you want to split this up, or are you going to take us through both?
I'm gonna do only the PlayStation and N64 here.
Okay.
I think
Okay.
it's time for some R&R, some ratings, and reviews. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater comes in at a 92 out of 100 from Metacritic. All Games gives it a 4.5 out of 5 stars. EGM gives it an 8.3 out of 10. Game Pro with a 5 out of 5. Game Revolution with an A for the PlayStation and a 5 out of 5 for the N64. Don't know why those are different. GameSpot gives the PlayStation a 9.3 and the N64 a 9.1. IGN gives the PlayStation a 9.4, the N64 a 9.1. And Next Generation gives, every version of 5 stars, which is pretty crazy. Now, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater was met with critical acclaim, and Doug Perry of IGN said the game is imaginative, deep, and consistent. The learning curve, intuitive and natural. The controls, large and complex. The levels are jaw-dropping, and the physics and the soundtrack are perfect. Now, we go over to Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2. We're coming in at a 98 for the PlayStation on Metacritic. That might be the highest rating we've ever seen. And an 84 out of 100 on the N64. We've seen the limitations before. PlayStation obviously having the better hardware to, whether it's a soundtrack or just the load times in general. EGM gives the N64 a 9 out of 10. Eurogamer with a 9 out of 10 as well. Famitsu with a 28 out of 40. Go fuck yourself, Famitsu. Game Informer with a 10 out of 10 for the PlayStation and a 9.2 out of 10 for the N64. Game Fan with a 268 out of 300 for the PlayStation. I don't even know what Game Fan is. Game Pro with a 3 out of 5 for the N64. Game Revolution with a 5 out of 5, of course. GameSpot with a 9.9 for the PlayStation and a 9.5 for the N64. Game Radar Plus with a 92%. IGN with a PlayStation 9.6 and an N64 8.6. Next Generation with the 5 stars. And official US PlayStation Magazine also 5 out of 5.
Not really surprised with how critically acclaimed and well praised this game is.
This is only the second highest rated game of all time on Metacritic, right behind The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time.
Man, I would love to do a series breakdown of that, but I know that you have no experience with them.
No experience, but I would love to have that experience. Not gonna say no to that. Martin Taylor of Eurogamer declared the game to be the supreme champion of extreme sports gaming. I could agree with you, Martin. This is just... It's Tony Hawk, baby.
It's going to be hard to beat. That is for sure. Man, we got the next couple of weeks are going to be tough here because we're going to break down all of the Tony Hawk games and then we're going to give our favorite one at the end. But with that, John, what do you say we get into the soft lock question of the week? Let's do it. All right, the Soft Lock is a segment on the podcast where one of our mega marks from Patreon gives us a topic to debate, a question to answer. It is a question of the week with a fancy name. This week it comes to you from our friend, the Elder Spork. And Spork's question is, vert or street? And where did we skate? And where are our favorite spots?
I added that little last part in just because I wanted to know where you skated, George. But vert or street? Obviously street, because
street.
Wherever you can. We all put wax on our curbs outside of our house. It probably took years for that to finally deteriorate and not be there anymore. I remember coating that shit just to do my little grinds. These kids at school sold it. They would just melt candles into a puck shape, wrap it up real nice, put a sticker on it. We would all buy it.
I'm only a couple years older than you, so we're from the same time as now you go to school, you're in high school, you're in middle school. You're not they don't have those things on like the benches at school. Like if there's a lip somewhere at a in a school in early 2000s, there's nothing really that's they have those things that they put on to keep kids from grinding on them.
Yeah.
You don't have that back then. Like you free skate any bench you want.
Hell yeah, we did. There was a school near my house that was abandoned for a while. It was a middle school, and oh boy, did that place get abused. There was one kid that jumped off a roof and broke his legs with his skateboard.
God.
Because that's smart to do. There was a
like
lot of
onto a ramp or just
no, there was no ramp. It was just onto the ground. Yeah. He had a lot of crayons growing up. A lot of steps, a lot of stairs. I think a skateboard, while I was there, once went through the glass from one of the steps because they slipped. There were a lot of cops called because, the skateboarding, that eventually they chopped everything so you couldn't grind anymore. Now that it's like a big athletic center, it's not a school anymore. They finally redid it. But, oh my God, the skateboarders around this town destroyed that place for the few years that it existed.
Yeah, we had the same kind of thing where it was just a really long series of strip malls on a major road. So it'd be like strip mall intersection, and we would just bounce from one to another. And every one of them had different flower beds or seating arrangements or whatever that you could just very easily throw some wax on and get going. But the best, and I still to this day, every now and then we'll take out my board that's sitting behind me and just go for a ride. There is no better feeling than a freshly paved road. And I remember as a kid, even just being like, especially on not like a cruiser board, like on a regular like skateboard.
Oh yeah,
that freshly freshly smooth paved ground was just like, as soon as your wheels hit it, and
with some fresh bearings,
like the rumble to the whoosh. Like once you heard that whoosh noise, you were like, "This is bliss." Like I don't know any other feeling that is better than this.
So my first skateboard was a Black Label, and it was so shitty that like I just had really bad bearings, and I didn't know any different. So when I got like a new deck, I got a Baker Jim Greco. And like it actually had like nice wheels and bearings. I was like, oh my God, this is what it should have been like this whole time.
Oh man. I don't even remember what I had a hand-me-down birdhouse.
I still have both of mine in the garage over here.
No, I think every deck that I had either broke or was given to someone else when I was like, all right, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
I was the kid that was always hurt. So like at a certain point I was like, all right, I got to hang up the boots here because clearly I'm not good at this.
You know what I loved was putting decks together.
Oh my God.
People needed help.
My favorite.
No one knew how to do grip tape. I knew how to do grip tape. Like guys,
it's the most satisfying thing in the world.
So satisfying. And then you get like fancy with it. You start doing designs and stuff. Like I had like camo mixed in. Oh, it was so much fun.
John, it's almost like we were setting ourselves up for a creative outlet in our future as graphic designers. Yeah, it's crazy to think that
on our wrestling podcast,
the two people who are graphic designers are also the same two people who enjoyed doing the creative part of putting a deck together.
Did you ever go to Tanner Park? It's in Babylon.
No,
okay.
I don't.
That was a nice skate park. I used to go with TK and our friend Diego. And I'm talking like college. Like we got back into it. And I was just scared to do like anything because you're older, like I got to go to school tomorrow. Like I can't be hurting myself, especially when I don't know how to do this stuff to begin with.
What was this, the skate company? And every sticker all over the place.
Spitfire?
No, it was like a local thing to us.
Oh, I don't know.
It's like a local company, and there were stickers.
If you say it, I probably know.
I can't remember it. It was all over the island. Didn't matter where you went.
Huh.
There was the stickers on the backs of stop signs, on poles. It was everywhere.
I'm sure if you said it, I would know exactly.
We're going to hit stop recording, and I'm immediately going to message you and be like, it's this. How did I forget this?
I hope so. I hope you do.
Oh, man. But hey, if you are a fan of this game, of this series, and you were a skater as a youth, let us know. Were you a vert or a street skater? What were your favorite spots? Did you have? I know a lot of people used to skate in like bank parking lots. That was their big thing because they always had a lot of like flower beds and benches outside for stuff like that. I know someone who would only skate at a specific McDonald's because it was a part of a giant strip mall that was, oh man, I can't remember. It was like either near a beach or near a man-made body of water or something. So there were so many like little seating spots outside, and he was like, I could skate 7 flower beds and like 4 benches, and they're all angled differently, and you can like never saw it, never went, but apparently it was like the mecca of skateboarding in our youth. But hey, let us know if you were a skater, what kind of spots you hit when you were a kid. John, next week, no big mystery. We are breaking down Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 and 4, continuing on the Tony Hawk Pro Skater series. I'm very excited to be doing this.
Let us know how you feel about this new format we're testing, and if it works for you. So.
Yeah. And we mentioned it last week. We're going to mention it here again. What was the date that we're making the big change?
Okay. So we're going to go through August as normal, and then we will say
September 2nd?
September 2nd will be an episode. The 9th will be skipped. We'll be back on the 16th. So that's when the every other week is going to start.
Okay. Do you want me to just say all that again?
Oh, I thought that was in.
Oh, no. I didn't know if you wanted to like leave that conversation in there or just have it be like a.
Just leave it. It's fine.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure if you wanted it to be more like an official like statement of like, this is what's happening. All right, guys, if you want to get more video content from John and I, you can go over to youtube.com/GameMarksPodcast. We've got playthrough videos and a whole lot more. If you wanted to get some exclusive merchandise, we have GameMarksPod.com/shop. We also have a Pro Wrestling Tees store, ProWrestlingTees.com/GameMarksPod. And if you want Pod Exchange merch, that is this show, State of Affairs, and Going Postal. If you want to get some more merchandise to support all of us, you can go to podexchange.shop. That is PODXCHANGE.shop. Make sure to also check out patreon.com/podexchange. Spelled the exact same way, PODXCHANGE. That is exclusive content from this show, State of Affairs, and Going Postal, live watch-alongs, early access, and ad-free to all of those shows. And if you would be so kind, if you're new here, you could follow us on all forms of social media at GameMarksPod. Please make sure to like, to comment, subscribe, and ring that notification bell, and leave us a review and a rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you choose to listen to your podcast. And if you have a product or service you would like to advertise on this podcast, you can reach out to us over at GameMarksPod@gmail.com. John, we are turning over a new leaf here. A new chapter of the Game Marks podcast starts today. Whenever you're ready, sir, send the people home happy.
Game over. Marks.
Game Marks Podcast, put them on the radar. Playing rare games, Sega Saturn, no Game Shark. Johnny and George work hard and they play hard. Future endeavor games and put them in the graveyard. From the deep dive to the clash at the feast. How can I get more? That's question of the week. Follow on Twitch, there's nothing that they won't play. Game Marks Podcast every single Monday.